Well, thanks again for being here this morning. Appreciate everybody coming out, and this is always a great facility. Yvonne, thanks for your hospitality. I appreciate that. You got a tremendous center here. I always enjoy coming here. It's just so full of vibrancy, and you do a lot of good and exciting things here. So continue to use this because it's a great facility, and I'm always happy when I'm in town and able to come up here. So today we're going to talk. I'm joined by my friends in AARP today. Anybody a member of AARP? Yeah. Well, I've become old enough to become a member, but I don't want to share that with too many people. So you know, but I'm joined by Laura Palmer, who is, and I have to remember your title here, Laura. I know the name, but the Associate State Director of AARP. So Laura works with us in Albany on a number of issues. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate it. We made it an easy ride for you today with the weather. We're talking about a lot of things relative to consumers, and all of us are consumers. And today this is an important thing because I know I'm very fortunate. I'm blessed. Both of my parents are still healthy, and one is 92 and the other is 88. They're home, and I'm an only child, so my wife and I are always kind of keeping an eye on things for my parents. I'm blessed that they're with me and still living in their home. And one of the things my mom complains to me a lot about are these calls that she gets. So I know a lot of what's happening in seniors' world, not only because I'm getting there year by year, but as I get older. But to hear my parents and to see their experiences gives me a better opportunity and understanding to appreciate what many people go through. But that's everybody, not just seniors. It's everybody in general. But in this case particularly, my mom will come up to me and say, I'm on the do not call list, but I continue to get calls. And that's a problem, because if we're going to pass legislation, and this legislation is federal legislation, then you should be able to enforce the legislation. Because if you tell people, well, we're going to put you on a list, and as a result of that you won't be bothered, but you still get bothered, then you begin to lack that confidence in the system and say, well, what good is this? This is ridiculous. Well, here's what happened. I'll give you a little history and tell you what I'm trying to do today. So in 2001, New York realized that this was a problem, and we passed our own do not call law. But obviously, state by state makes it very difficult. So in 2003, to their credit, the federal government passed a do not call law, which required and put together a do not call registry. We're going to give you, many of you might know that, there's an online site called www.donotcall.gov. And there's a phone number that you can call when you're having problems. We'll give everybody those numbers in the website again, okay? Including the press if they don't have it. But the issue was, even from the very beginning, that there were exemptions to the law. There were organizations exempted that could still call even if you went and said, I want to be on a do not call list. For instance, some of the exemptions are political organizations. So you can get calls by political candidates. Charities, people who are having 501c3 corporations, any charity, the Red Cross, people like that could make calls to you. Survey takers, people that are doing polls. That's how you get the polls, like John Zogby, when John Zogby does his polls here. So survey takers. And businesses that you've had a relationship with over the last year and a half. So if you went to Lowe's and did business with them over the last 18 months, year and a half, they could still call you. However, you could ask to have them take off, end that relationship, and have them be put on this do not call list, but it would still take about 31 days for it to take effect. So that's how this all started, where you can register. You have this 1 month period where you still may get calls, but it should substantially reduce those number of calls, hopefully. But in many cases, that hasn't happened. The reason for that has been technology. So technology, which is good for all of us, has also become problematic in some of these instances, because now you get these robocalls that begin to come in, and they can trick the caller ID information. They call that spoofing. So that means that Lauren's phone number may show up on my caller ID, and I may pick up the phone because I think it's Lauren, and then it turns out to be one of these telemarketers. So that's very difficult. So what can we do about it? Right now in the state of New York, this is all governed, and this is what makes this more challenging. This is all governed by the federal government, okay, by the Federal Trade Commission. So that's why we're going to tell you again the steps you can do. The first thing is you need to report somebody through the Federal Trade Commission through this registry and through this phone number that we will give you, this 1-888 number, which is a toll-free number. And I'll give you the number now because I see some of you have paper out there. 1-888-382-1222. 1-888-382-1222. That's 1-888-382-1222. So that's the number that you call when you have a complaint for the Federal Trade Commission. Now in New York, the Department of State has the responsibility to monitor this. In 2012, I think it was 2012, that we in New York, in 2012, we passed a law that forced people to register in New York if you were going to do telemarketing. Because in the past, there was a law that said if you were in state, you had to register. But a lot of these companies are not in the state, but they still make calls in New York. So what we require them to do is all register in New York now. So that gives the authority to the Department of State in the New York State government to have oversight. So if there is somebody that's bothering you and you make this report to the Federal Trade Commission, our Department of State will then review that and can go after them. So what I'm putting together is a piece of legislation because I think the consequences have to be more severe. Right now the fine is $11,000 if they get somebody who is disobeying and violating the law and disobeying your request not to call them. What this legislation will do is hike the fine from $11,000 to $20,000. It'll be a $20,000 offense if you have been identified with violating the law and infringing upon people's privacy. Now that means our Department of State will enforce that. I have an assemblyman has put the bill in. It's Assemblyman Dan Quart, who is from the 73rd District down in the Hudson Valley towards the city area. Where? Manhattan. We're right in the city itself. So he is right in Manhattan. He is putting the bill in too. So we'll have an Assembly and a Senate companion bill. So we'll have the opportunity to get this through the legislative process. Look, I know this is going to be difficult because I want to give you some hope here. I want you to know that we're listening to you and we want to try to fix this, but I'm going to tell you it's going to be difficult. So you need to do some things for yourself. You know, when you get that robocall that you don't want to answer and they always tell you to press 1, don't press 1, hang up. Don't even try to catch an operator or something like that, because once you hit that 1, that puts you into the queue and they're going to be able to have your number and they know somebody's around, it's a live phone, and they're going to continue to call you. The other thing you can do is, as I indicated to you, is to call that number, that 1-888-382-1222, and report this. Now, the State Department will begin to look at the reports that have been made to the federal government, and then we can go and look at prosecuting people who have offended this. We do have investigators that work for the state. I'm going to see what we can do, because I chair the Telecommunications Committee of the Senate, which oversees all communications issues. So what I'm going to try to do is see if we can't find a better way to partner with the federal government too, to make sure there's a way you can contact somebody. Instead of calling the federal government and then the state go look at the federal government's register to see what the problem is, to see if we can't make it easier to file complaints in New York State too, so that we can at least have our State Department and investigators go out to find out if there's somebody that's abusing this system and registry that exists. So that's the essence of what we're going to do, is we recognize that this is not perfect. It's still going to continue to plague us in some way. But on the other hand, if you're going to have a do not call, we should make it as good as possible, and we should enforce the law as much as possible, because the more we hit people with a penalty as a result of inappropriate behavior and inappropriate contact, then the better I think it will be to stop them from doing this. But there's a lot of, as you know, there's a lot of scammers out there, and there's a lot of bad actors out there. So we're going to work with AARP and others to try to continue to inform you and to help you. But this is one more step to say we're getting a lot of calls and interaction with people who just say, I'm on the do not call list, but I continue to get bothered. And I think that's wrong, and we should do something to try to help to enhance what we already have and to ensure that there's a penalty put on these people who disobey the law. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Palmer. She's going to say a few words from AARP, And then we have a little example here that we're going to talk about. Then we'll let Yvonne close it up, and then I'll answer any of your questions, okay?
Senator,
Lauren.
thank you, Senator Griffo, for your bill to crack down on the do not call registry violations and for calling attention to this issue with today's event. I'm Laura Palmer. I'm the Associate State Director for AARP here in the Mohawk Valley. And I and our AARP volunteers that you see here today are so happy to help spread the message that crime should not pay. It's really incredible that there are bad actors who can come out ahead by willfully violating the law and paying what amounts to a nuisance fine. By nearly doubling the fines for the do not call registry violation, Senator Griffo's bill will reestablish an effective deterrent and help curtail this unwelcome and potentially dangerous practice. Now, we know elder financial abuse is pervasive and it's a growing problem. According to a MetLife study from 2011, it already accounted for $2.9 billion out of victims' pockets nationally. And that number was up 12% from 3 years prior. As our population ages, elder financial abuse will only become more appealing to perpetrators. We also know women are more than twice as likely to be victims of elder financial abuse than are men. And what's more, the problem is often far worse than it may appear, since documented cases represent just a fraction of all cases, with many victims reluctant to come forward. In 2014, the Federal Trade Commission found that telephone and mobile services scams accounted for the third highest category of fraud and other consumer complaints in New York State, barely topped by imposter and debt collection scams. Left unchecked, things will only get worse. Again, we congratulate Senator Griffo for introducing Senate Bill 6553 and for elevating the importance of this legislation with today's event. We're here, we're ready to work with the Senator and with his colleagues in the Assembly, and we thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauren.
I'd like to introduce Rona Lucas. Rona is the secretary of the Utica chapter, and I found out this morning that she is actually personally impacted by this legislation, so I'm going to ask Rona to just stand up and say a couple of words.
Yes, lately I've been getting an awful lot of phone calls. And a lot of them have the 315 area code attached to them, which makes me think it's going to be one of my friends or relatives going to be calling. I get this no answer. These, when I look at my answer phone and see all the messages that I'm getting, there's nothing on it. Also, it also is with my cell phone, which I have listed on the do not call list, both my home phone and my cell phone. And I'm encouraged by this. I hope it works.
Thank you, Rona.
Okay.
Yvonne?
I just want to say that I feel very blessed to live in an area where we have the representation that we have in Albany. I have known Joe since I started this job, and his other position as well, which I'm starting my 18th year, and he has always been such a strong advocate for seniors. He's doing a phenomenal job in Albany, and this is just another example of how hard he is working for us on a daily basis. And through the year, he'll call, just call. Is there anything I can do? What do you need? And we certainly are very blessed to have him and Assemblyman Brindisi working for us every day in Albany, and hopefully this will, at least, like you say, ramp down what's been happening and eventually put these people out of business. I thank everybody for coming. I thank you, Joe, for having it here and allowing us to host this today. And just keep up the good work.
Thanks, Yvonne. Excuse me. I can't believe it's 18 years, though.
I can't either.
I was not eligible for AARP when that started.